I mean, shall we shift now to the fact, of course, those who attended that banquet were really rather unusual, and I'm not sure whether this fact has really filtered through in the same way that it did. Um, it was a very different crew from what's normally invited to these things. It was very much more business heavy, very, very business heavy. And the thing that was really striking about it was, of course, that Trump was effectively traveling with the second row. We've already mentioned his inauguration. I mean, if you remember the scene in the rotunda, you've got the royal family, the Trump family, and its various dependent branches front, and then immediately behind, you've got the barons of the world of California, of high tech, of big pharma. The whole of that world is arrayed there, and a very large chunk of that world. The CEO of Nvidia, Tim Cook himself of Apple, astonishing. There was one, of course, vastly conspicuous omission, which was Elon Musk. But other than that, I mean, it was as though that entire range of once upon a time solidly Democrats supporting giants of the new business world had been all tucked under President Trump's arm, put into his briefcase on Air Force One, and whisked over and plunked down along with President Trump to be dazzled by the grandiosity of Windsor hospitality.
What I heard you saying was this is sort of akin to these baron heads are akin to our nobility.
They are.
But in contrast to prior administrations, who was not in attendance there, David, who is usually akin to our nobility? Celebrity.
That's right. Nor did we produce celebrities. I mean, it was deeply refreshing. It was celeb free. There were no Beckhams being wheeled out. There were no pop singers. It was very, very different. In other words, that on the one hand there is that Ruritanian element, but of course the razzle tazzle for the president. But on the other hand, there's a clearly deeply serious. I mean, again, I gather that, although I didn't realize it myself, I gather that as part of Project 25, the 2025, the sort of heritage quasi blueprint for the second Trump administration that was so hotly denied, but clearly was extraordinarily powerful, that keeping Britain out of the orbit of the EU was one of the actual points.
Yes.
In the Project 2025. So, do you see that this in terms of both countries was actually a serious exercise of both business and foreign policy realignment?
I think it's definitely that, and it's so completely in line with, President Trump and the Trump administration are against the one world order, the multilaterals. They're absolutely for bilateral relationships. Trump was, a chief and vociferous supporter of Brexit. So I think, there was definitely a message about sovereignty there, and, this exclusive, I hate to say, dare I say, special relationship. I was thinking this may be, a new era for the special relationship.
No, I mean, I think it's the only way you can read it, because, in fact, in previous periods, you can see, if you actually look at the real special relationship that there was between Reagan and Thatcher, there's ideological community. Of course, there is absolutely no ideological commonality or community between Starmer and Trump. On the other hand, what you can see is, and again, part of the bizarre contradictions of the Starmer administration, the only reason, apart from, of course, the never to be mentioned and completely unknown Lord Mandelson, that any of this was possible, was precisely because it was a Brexit dividend. We were out of the EU. None of this could conceivably have happened. And I think it's particularly interesting that the big focus was on AI. the area that Europe has been imposed its regulatory blanket on most completely, where there is the biggest divergence of development between Europe barely having touched it, and America, of course, along with China, having taken it so far. But the praise for the possibility of Britain doing this, because again, I suppose it does need saying, with the extraordinary intellectual centres of the so-called Golden Triangle of London, Oxford, and Cambridge. There is, I think, the only other area of the world apart from China where there is actually that degree of originality, creative thinking, extraordinary depths of scientific knowledge that can rival California.
And of course, that leads into on September 18th, Trump and Starmer signed, to not to overuse the word, but another historic deal, the Technology Prosperity Deal, which 10 billion in initial deals and 204 billion investment pledges.
Almost real money, isn't it? Almost. If you remember Reagan, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and you're soon talking real money. If you apply the multiplier of inflation, I mean, so I think and again, the fact that Tim Cook there, the head of NVIDIA and whatever, these are the biggest possible players. But there is, a ghost. I don't know whether you've caught up with this. One group of people who you would have expected to be there weren't. The big pharma that had turned up at Trump's inauguration were not there, because big pharma, although bioscience is one of the areas where Britain is and always has been, going right back to the days of Alexander Fleming and whatever, a leader, big pharma has fallen badly behind here. And at the same time that we've been announcing that publicly rejoicing in these deals in AI and whatever, you've actually seen major American investment, which had already been agreed in Britain, actually being suspended or abandoned. I came in today, as you know, I was travelling down from doing an event in the north of England in Harrogate. And so I came into King's Cross and Pancras, and I got a cab. And as my cab pulled out of St Pancras to bring me down to Bloomsbury, I see the huge and very handsome structures of the projected bioresearch laboratory for Eli Lilly. Silent. 3/4 finished, and they've just turned the tap off. And it's quite fascinating. This is, of course, another side of Trump. It's Trump's determination to reduce the costs of drugs in America and make the rest of the world pay more. But it's also a combination of an area where, of course, the state in Britain exercises such a profound and such an awkward influence. It's the NHS. The reason that we've so passionately held down drug prices in Britain is that they're paid by the state. And again, the machinery for deciding, and it's particularly the area of new drugs, one of the areas that we are really suffering in Britain, despite having this not simply Americans here, not simply having had Merck and Eli Lilly and all the rest of them here, but having the very, very substantial drug industry of our own. But we are underusing cutting-edge drugs for the simple reason the NHS has decided it can't afford it. And I think this is an absolutely fundamental problem. We have a committee that's responsible for deciding whether the NHS can take in a drug, and it uses, to measure the effectiveness of drugs, what's called a QALY, which is a quality adjusted life year. And it values, do you know how much it values a human life at per year? £30,000. Tiny. And it has not been readjusted since the 1990s.
I'm glad at least we have a favorable exchange rate over here.
Yes, I think, well, indeed. But it is tiny. And the result of this is, and here again, it's the problem where genuine, I mean, scientific discovery, business advance depends on a strategic willingness to deploy large sums of money. But if you have state regulated medicine, of course, there is this desperate desire to pare costs at the margin. Um, and you can see very clearly how there's a fight between the two objectives. If you know if you want the Glaxo Wellcome and all the rest of it to flourish, if you want Merck to come here, if you want Eli Lilly to come here, they've actually got to be able to make money out of it. It's this strange notion people have that somehow businesses should do things out of the kindness of their heart. But absolutely nothing at all apart from the public benefit. But I think that was a shadow. But I think it's a very important shadow that slightly hung over the event, and it's one that I think matters an awful lot because it's one of those areas where, with the wreckage of our industry, partly by Thatcher, and particularly by green energy being so wildly expensive, our fuel costs, our electricity costs are 4 times yours.